What's going on, everybody? I obviously, I don't know necessarily want to say I've abandoned my personal channel. Anybody that still follows me over here, I'm guessing if you pay attention, you've seen it go through a few name changes just because I don't know how I feel about making content over here right now. I just haven't really been inspired to do so, I suppose. Um, this particular video I've been wanting to make for a couple days. Actually, I had the inspiration for it kind of last month. Today is November 8th, 2022. I wanted to actually make this video 4 days ago. Uh, it's been a really strange couple days. Um, the reason I wanted to make it is because November 4th marked the 2 year anniversary of when I moved into this apartment that you see behind me. By the way, don't pay attention to what's in the chair over there. That's a little bit of chaos. Obviously, what you're seeing on your screen where it says Ranting Ryan, it says My Chaotic Mind. That's my chaotic chair. Um, Other than the one that I'm, permanently in. Um, but I guess, obviously, with, rebranding as Ranting Ryan, you guys know that if you've followed me long enough and you pay attention to my content, that um, I've done several attempts at doing podcasts, either by myself or with friends, um, with guests sometimes, uh, and it's never really panned out. About a year ago, a little over a year, uh, I finally found somebody that I really click with, and we've been doing a, well, in my mind, a successful podcast because the previous attempts that I've done, literally both of them, only lasted up until 9 episodes, I believe, both of them, and I never could figure out why. Um, but this one has gone on. I can't really say consistently for the entire year because we've had definitely our ebbs and flows, kind of peaks and valleys, however you want to describe it. We've had our ups and downs, not with each other, but just with the process of creating content to put out. Um, Previously, when I had done podcasts, they were strictly videos that I put up on, my personal channel. Now, over the last year, um, we have a podcast on pretty much all audio platforms. We have a YouTube channel where we put content sometimes, but not consistently yet. Um, if you want to find that, I'll put the description. I'll put it in the description below. But I kind of just wanted to record a video over here reflecting on the last 2 years being in my apartment. Um, People that follow me on here don't necessarily know me in real life. Some of you do, or most of you don't. Um, but uh, I was born with spina bifida. I've been in a wheelchair my entire life. And for the most part, as per, you know, society's general understanding of people with medical special needs, they tend to not, they have it in their head that they tend to not be able to live independently. Um, I have been told, or had been told, for several years, um, that I would never be able to live on my own. I would always, have to live under my mother's roof. I would always depend on her because I would never be able to function independently. Um, those people never understood the way that my mother raised me. Um, Granted, I did not move out of New York until I was 28. I had lived under my mother's roof until then. I moved to Virginia in August of 2013. And I always joke that as soon as I left, my mom followed me because she ended up moving to Virginia as well, um, which worked out in a way. Um, I ended up on the complete east coast of Virginia for the first month because I had originally planned that that was where I was going to settle. And, I was with friends that I had gone to school with who had moved down here. Um, and, I was having a great time. But I think it just, it wasn't what I thought was going to be the ideal situation. Nothing against them. They were great. They were very accommodating. It just, for me, it just wasn't the ideal situation. I ended up uh, moving at that point to Tennessee with other friends that coincidentally I had gone to school with at one time or another. And I stayed there for 9 months. So that brings me to June of 2014. June of 2014, uh, it got to a situation where I realized that, again, that was kind of, I was still in transition from figuring out my final kind of resting place, so to speak. That's really weird to say. Uh, so things happened where it wasn't the ideal situation, and so I moved back to Virginia, but this time on the west coast of Virginia, um, or at least inland, like all the way inland. And I ended up in uh, southwest Virginia, um, which is where I am now. I have been in Roanoke, Virginia since June of 2014. And the reason that I say that it was helpful that my mom ended up following me down was because when I moved out to Suffolk, Virginia, when I first left New York, she moved here to Roanoke. So she's been in Roanoke the entire time. Well, up until now, but I'll get to that. Um, and it helped that she was here because it gave me kind of stability while I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on with what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. Once I got to Roanoke, I something clicked in my head and made me realize that this is where I wanted to stay. Like, this is where I want to put roots. Um, I've said many times that I never really felt, even though I grew up there for 28 years, I never really felt connected to New York. Um, there was just something about it. I never felt connected to it. I felt connected here, and I still do. It hasn't been an easy process. Definitely has not been an easy process, but it's been a process that was necessary. Uh, so I ended up back under mom's roof from 2014 to November of 2020, I believe. Yes, November of 2020. Um, and, you know, it definitely was a struggle um, at times, but I was a little bit more focused on uh, figuring out course of action, an avenue that I wanted to take. Um, One of the things that I mean, I would assume is available everywhere, which is something I wanted to avoid for so long. Um, Being an individual with special needs, there are services available to individuals like myself. One being uh, income-based housing. Now, living in New York, and any of my friends that see this, I know some of my very close friends have lived in income-based housing, and you know, it doesn't make them bad people. It's just the they are kind of working with the circumstances that that were presented to them. Uh, so they're working within those circumstances. However, my interpretation of income based housing was kind of people that didn't want to contribute anything, like just wanted everything handed to them. And if you know me and you know my mom, that's definitely not the way she raised me. I do not like having things handed to me. I do not like having, people constantly help me. I'm kind of a stubborn asshole. So I was afraid, even down here, I was afraid of the stigma of what people would think if they realized that I was in income based housing. Because I'm sorry, a lot of you people up there that I left behind, you're very opinionated. And you have opinions about other people's situations when you're ignoring your own. That's just the truth of it. Um, and I've done a lot of reflecting in the 9 years that I've been in Virginia, and even more reflection in the 2 years that I've been finally in my own apartment for the first time. And I realized who I could count on, who I couldn't. Um, Now, one of the major things, as I mentioned before, with the current podcast that I'm doing, um, my co host and I decided, because I met her in 2020 on social media, and we talked in 2021 about starting the podcast. And one of our reasons for starting the podcast was because we were sick and tired of seeing people be unwilling to have conversations with others because they were afraid of disagreeing. Because for whatever reason, over the last, what was it, 6, 7 years, people have really developed unnecessary animosity towards each other. And if you know me, you know I'm a very social person. So witnessing that happening for the stupidest fucking reasons, it was disheartening, and it just made me angry at even at people I knew, because there were people that I have known for a decade or more, or several decades, that were just seemingly finding reasons to completely cut off all communication with me, and it irritated the piss out of me. And it's kind of convenient that I'm making this video this month, because on the 11th is the anniversary of the very first. Is it the 11th? No, I'm sorry, not the 11th. The 25th. Yes, the 25th. Marks the 11th anniversary of when I took my first solo vacation from New York to Louisville, Kentucky, and to see a friend of mine who, again, I had met online. Had a great time back in 2011 in Kentucky. Had a great time. And up until about 2015 or 2016, myself and this friend had stayed very close. We were thick as thieves. God, I feel old saying that, because nobody uses that anymore. And then, the tides changed, and it seemed like that individual was finding any reason to cut off all communication with me. Now, I've had this discussion with my mother for several years when things like this happen, where somebody just kind of drifts out of my life for whatever reason. Most of the time, I don't know the reason. She, a lot of times, will think that, I've said something that pissed them off, or, I've done something. And what I've learned over the last 7 years is that if people are looking for a reason to drop out of your life, they're going to find one, whether it is your fault or not. Because those people are just, I don't know, like, there's something about that type of person that is just so confusing. If you ever get a chance, look up online. There's I don't know if it's necessarily considered a poem, but it's a written piece called Reason, Season, Lifetime. It describes 3 types of people in your life. People that are in your life for a reason, people that are in your life for a season, and people that are in your life for a lifetime. We actually, Amanda and I, did a episode on the podcast about this particular written piece. It's fascinated me ever since I found it. But it just seems like, especially over the last 7 years, people have just found reasons to completely end friendships, relationships, what have you, for no good reason. But they were obviously looking for a reason to exit, the lives of those that they were connected to. And what I've noticed, because the way that we describe the podcast is um, we are having, we want to have the conversations that people are unwilling to have, but we also want to learn about ourselves by learning about those around us through conversation. Um, and I think that that is something that we have done a lot of. It's given me a lot of perspective on a lot of people, that I interact with online, that I interact with here in Virginia. But the one thing that it's made me realize is it made me realize and understand, well, not necessarily understand, but it brought a lot of light to the reactions that people had when I left New York. Because there are so many people that were encouraging when I told them that I was, finally moving out on my own and going to be on my own for the first time. And then there were people that got very, very angry and very, very wordy with me. Like, they were very sharp tongued with me. Almost like they needed me around for validation. And because I was leaving, they didn't know how to cope with that. So they got very angry with me and they expressed that anger. Um, I still don't understand that. And the other thing, especially the last year or so, um, that I've realized with the podcast, in contrast to when I left New York, uh, one of the things that I realized leaving New York was who was going to, remain in my life, even with me physically not being in New York, versus those that were just going to drift off. Um, I, and I mean, I can show you any number of, DMs that I have where I've made a concerted effort to maintain contact with so many people who I held very close to me when I was in New York. But trying to get people to initiate that interaction is damn near impossible. And it's disheartening because there are so many people that said, that congratulated me, that, wished me well, that said that they were still going to keep in contact. And I haven't heard from them. There are people that said, you've inspired me to, you know, get the hell out of New York and, move down closer to you. They still haven't done it. There's actually one person that was going to get out of New York, and I stupidly financially helped them, and they basically just dropped the ball, and I am out that money, and I have been for several years now. Um, but it amazes what I think this whole experience, you know, either the 9 years that I've been out of New York or, the 2 years that I've been on my own and the 1 year that I've been doing the podcast, it's really made me understand people a lot more. And it's made me not as social. It's made me not as interested in engaging with certain people. Um, it's also kind of made me more in tune with people's body language, the way that they present themselves, whether or not I want to involve myself in a social situation with them. Um, it's just like I will say that going forward, content on here on this channel is going to be very unscripted and not very well put together, like not, you know, very tight. Um, that's why it's called My Chaotic Mind. So I'm hoping that, you're still able to follow along. But I'm grateful for what I've been able to realize looking back at the situations that I was in from a third party perspective or a third person perspective. Um, because even one of my closest friends, who I have known since I was 5 years old, and Krista, if you see this, it's not you that I'm talking about, so don't worry. Um, Somebody that I've known since I was 5 years old, um, basically decided to stop talking to me for no good reason. And it all started because I kind of stupidly made a decision and signed up for something, but I guess I didn't read the fine print, because what I thought I was signing up for was going to end up being something that was a monthly charge. But when I signed up for it, knowing what the price was going to be, or knowing what the price, said right in front of my face, they ended up charging me for the year right up front instead of, uh, month by month. So this particular friend, having been, familiar with with services like this, I reached out to her, and I was frantic because it blew my mind that I was reading one thing and then a completely different thing happened. So I was kind of frantic, and in the past, I would have been able to go to her, and she would have been able to kind of help me see things a little bit clearer. But for whatever reason, she got overwhelmed. She got mad at me, and she didn't indicate that she was mad at me, but she hasn't spoken to me in 2 years because of it. And it's like, I'm I don't understand these people that can take a friendship or relationship that spans several decades and just completely cut it off, like it never happened, like it never meant anything. I don't As much as I'm starting to realize about humans, it makes me realize that I don't understand them. And I just I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had since I've been in Virginia. And I'm grateful for the things that I've been able to realize since moving down here, since moving into my own apartment. I'm grateful for the things that I've realized about myself. I'm grateful for the things that, even though it took me damn near 30 years, I'm grateful for the things that I finally realized about the people I was surrounding myself with. Um, because, I think when people say I keep my circle small, I think the majority of them like to think they do, but there are still too many people who need affirmation from others. And for a long time, I think I was around enough people that were like that that I ended up adopting those qualities. Um, but within the last 2, 3 years, I finally have I've been, it's bad to say, but I don't need people's affirmation. I don't need people to approve of me. And it's freeing, but it's also frustrating. Um I don't know. Like I said, these videos are probably going to be chaotic and just all over the place. I hope some of you will listen. Um, I know a lot of you won't. I don't know. It's hard to kind of organize the shit that's in my head. It's just I all I know is I need to get it out of my head so that I can actually rest my brain. Um, I really wish that the people that said that they would keep in contact with me when I left New York would actually, step up and, live by their word, where I don't have to feel like I'm inconveniencing them by reaching out to them. Because the very short conversations that we end up having make me feel that way. Um, Whereas that's why I like the podcast that I do with my friend Amanda, because I've said since the beginning when we started that, I always say after every episode how good my brain actually feels after having a meaningful, deep conversation. Um, I just. I'm glad that I've been able to prove to myself that people were wrong about me being able to survive on my own. Um, Mom is now living out of Roanoke. She's in another town. She's about to get married for a second time, which is cool. Um, and, you know, I think initially I wondered what it would be like with her living, that distance away. Um, but it hasn't stopped my routine. It hasn't stopped me from being able to function. So anybody up in New York who ever told me that I wouldn't be able to live independently of my mother, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Fuck you, because I'm doing it. Um, Not that I have anything to prove to you guys, but you need to, you know, keep your opinions to yourself, because all they are is shit. People that feel the need to constantly remark on other people's lives are so unfulfilled themselves that they don't know their ass from their elbow. And you guys really need to get your shit together, because there's so much life that you're missing out on by just looking around you and commenting on other people and their lives, the way they're living their lives. Um, there's a quote, I believe it is from Eleanor Roosevelt. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. which one are you? That's the question I'm going to leave you with. You need to think about that, because there are too many people who are very small-minded in this world, and we're not going to get anywhere individually or collectively with that many small minds. Like I said, this is just a rant. There's really no singular purpose to it. But yeah, what kind of mind are you? And I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. If you have, let me know in the comments below.
Have you ever felt like shutting the fuck up?